Hi there, this is Russ from the Japanese Garden Club, and here is our latest interview for you. And if you want a Japanese garden or you have one of the ingredients I'm absolutely certain that you will be looking to include are maples and acers. And very fortunately, we have the go-to guy on that very subject. It's Patrick McDaid from Tamukeyama is the name of the company. And Patrick, you're a New Zealander, but you're based in the United Kingdom, aren't you?
I am, Russ. I've been over here about 6 months. We grow our Japanese maples in New Zealand, and we export them to the UK in a mature form. So all of our trees are brought over here. The minimum sort of size we bring across at the moment is 45 litres, so they're quite big trees. And we've set up a nursery here in the UK and have begun selling the trees this year.
So if I get this right, it's an extension of a very successful operation in New Zealand.
Yes, we've got, in New Zealand, we've got about 6 nursery fields. We do 60 varieties. And you're right, the UK was the obvious sort of place to come next.
Your website is Tamata, tamata.co.uk, correct?
That's correct, yep.
And what about for people who are listening down under in New Zealand, Australia, and are thinking about acers and maples? Do you have the web address for the New Zealand side of the operation?
Yes, so it's exactly the same. It's tamata.co, but it's .nz for New Zealand.
I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, obviously, acers and maples, are really, really popular for Japanese gardens and indeed Western gardens. People like to have them because of the colouring at various times of the year and the shape that you can actually grow and prune them into. Yep. Can we start, because what I was keen to do with you, and it's probably in a way not boring for you, but it's fairly basic stuff. For people who are thinking, okay, I've got my Japanese garden planned out, I really do want to get some maples now. Let's start at the very beginning. How do they go about picking the right maple for their garden space?
I think it's all to do with the planning. So I think the first step is for them to work out what they want. I'm not a designer at all, but work out what you want. Do a lot of research. So there's hundreds and hundreds of Japanese maples out there. They grow at different rates. They have different aspects in terms of their colour through the seasons. There's some that have colourful bark, so in the wintertime you still get an appreciation of the tree. Yep. Some of the structure, you've got the gnarly branching and whatnot. So it's really for the people to sit down, plan. There's a lot of information out there on the web.
Well, there is within the Japanese Garden Club as well. There is a lot of information. Can we start with the two basic forms of maple? There's the palmatum, which I've got, and there's Dissectum. What are the characteristics of each of those, starting with palmatum?
Okay, palmatum, that's an upright tree, so that grows in your typical sort of tree form. So you can see the structure of the tree. Grows to generally for the maples, it grows to about 10 metres in height at full maturity. So a multi-stem tree, and we also grow standards in that form. So we have standards that have a clear stem of 2 metres and have a canopy then. The multi-stem trees...
the canopy is where the natural growth and the tending of it looks rather like an umbrella.
That's correct.
Yeah. And they look so beautiful. Yeah,
they are. And if you still stood under, say, a mature bloodgood and let the sun shine through, just the colours are amazing.
Wow. I know.
And so for a palmatum, it's more of a tree that you would have maybe as a specimen in the back of a garden as a focal point for the rear of your garden. Yeah,
sort of on the back edge, as it were. You might have some bamboo, and you can put one or two in front of it, spacing out a couple of rocks. Yeah, and it'd look lovely, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah,
perhaps there's a series in a sort of palmatum wood. Have a contrasting colours and forms, and just see that evolve through the year. A lot of nice trees in their own respect, and the second form is the Dissectum, which is quite different. often called a lace leaf, just because of the shape of the lace, the shape of the leaf.
Yeah.
Very much more delicate, fine, and these trees tend to grow to maybe 4 meters at maturity, and they have a cascading sort of effect. So the branching at the top of the tree grows out outwards, and then the cascades down, and you get a fuller canopy. So almost you can almost lift the whole canopy up as it's drooped down. So those tend to come in a standard form, so a clear stem and then the droopings down. We also do a feathered form where there's branching all the way up, where you can see more of the structure of the tree.
When you say, sorry to interrupt there, Patrick, when you say clear stem, that is one stem, and then at the top the growth of the tree starts, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were going to have your own little Japanese garden space, we'll come on to some of the tricks and how to look after them, plant them, what not to do, and what to do in a minute. Which one of the two, the palmatum or the dissectum, would you pick as a beginner, in inverted commas?
I would probably go for the dissectum because it just offers something different to what other items you might have in your garden, and it's just something. Looking at a dissectum, it's the cascading effect, the sort of almost the peaceful nature of it.
Yeah.
And again, these are lovely colours through the year. A spring colour changes to a summer colour to an autumn colour, and you get sort of three phases through the year, and that would be my preference.
Yeah. What we're doing with this interview is we're going to. Obviously, it's available as an audio interview in the Japanese Garden Club, and I'm going to do the usual sort of Russism. I'm going to turn it into a video, and you're going to send me some pictures, aren't you, that we can show the people exactly what we're talking about. So, palmatum, dissectums, go with the dissectum. When you choose the maple for your garden, is it important to plan two ways, sort of for now and for the future?
Yeah, like I said earlier, they grow at different rates, so do your research. And you might be one of your listeners might be looking to put an established garden straight in, so they would buy more mature maple. So then you don't need to worry so much about the growth through the time. But if they're starting with younger stock, then you want to have an appreciation of how things are going to change. And it's not just with the maples; it's with the whole garden. So you'll have other items in there, and you just want to do your research and have an understanding of how you think that the garden will evolve over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
And you could do that by looking at the pictures with this video, obviously checking out all about maples and trees in the Japanese Garden Club. There are pages there, and you can go to tomata.co.uk or tomata.nz and see some really fine examples on there. So the great thing about maples is that you get colours throughout the whole year, and that is one of the fundamental principles, Patrick, of Japanese gardening, isn't it? That what you have in it that grows and is colourful and changes colour reflects the seasons.
That's right. Yep, that's correct. And you certainly get that with maples.
Yeah. I've got a palmatum that is a very small one. I bought it when it was about 6 inches tall, and now it's up to about 1.5 foot. So I've got a little bit of growth to go. I like to start small. But other people, as you say, might like to go for more mature trees. What is the difference in cost if somebody says, look, I want a mature palmatum as opposed to a little miniature one in a pot that I'm prepared to put the effort in and look after and make it grow nicely over a period of time?
I guess it depends on how old you're looking at, and it will vary from, I know you've got listeners in the United States and all over the world. So I would say if you're starting with a small tree in a pot versus a sort of mature 10-year-old tree, you're probably, in terms of cost, maybe 15 times the cost. But if you break it down to the cost per year, it's much more. You can appreciate what you're paying for. If you see
it's
what
not
I mean.
So much money. No.
You're looking for you've made a decision to go established versus young, and that's one of the trade-offs.
Now, planting a maple, what tips can you give us? How do you plant them? Soil, other stuff.
Yep. Well, the planting, to make sure your maple thrives, the planting is probably the most important part, and there's probably not a surprise with that. So, in terms of soil, Japanese maples, it's sort of known that they like slightly acidic soil, but it's not limited to that. They've got quite a range on the pH, so sort of from 4.5 to 7.5. A maple is fine with all that. The important thing about the soil is that it's got to be well free draining. They don't like water sitting around their roots.
So if you had a sloped area, you could plant one there, and the water would naturally drain away.
Yeah. Some soils naturally they will drain away, and if you have got soil that isn't free draining, there are things you can do. Ask your local nurseryman, things you can do about that. Plant it with some organic matter, or get the recommendation for your area, and then you got your soil right, and then you move on to what do I need to do to plant it. So the maples, they've got their root system it doesn't go deep, it spreads out. It's a fibrous network, and it sort of stays close to the top of the soil. So they're pretty easy to plant. So what you need to do is just you buy your maple in a pot, dig a hole slightly bigger than the root mass that you've got. Right. Plant it with some organic matter. That just helps it kickstart it once it's been planted. Plant it at the same level as. Don't plant it any deeper than what it was in the original pot. And then once you've got it in, put some mulch around sort of the drip line of the tree or the outer edge of the canopy, because what it does need probably a couple of years with its root system so close to the surface. It needs mulch for a couple of reasons to help it or prevent it from drying out too quickly. The mulch keeps the moisture in, but it also keeps the weeds and the grass. Helps keep them away, and the maple doesn't want to have to be competing while it's getting established with the grass and the weeds for nutrients and for water. So they'd be the key things. That
brings us on very nicely to climate and maples, and I'm really glad that it's so important to protect the roots, as you say. And you could put a few sort of low-level plantings if you wanted to, rather than mulch, but watch out that you don't damage the roots. I would go the mulch route, definitely. In cold, there's a lot of myths, isn't there, about maples? They can't exist in very cold weather. In Japan, they certainly do, and perhaps you could allay people's fears on that because, for example, in North America, Canada, they have very, very harsh winters in some parts of the country, and very hot summers.
Yeah. So in terms of cold, maples can cope down to minus 18 degrees C, some of them a little colder than that. So for the UK, that's fine. We don't get down that close very often, I wouldn't have thought. And again, for your United States fans, there's information on the web to it defines the hardiness for Japanese maple by state. So a quick Google search will tell you where you are. It will tell you
which varieties are more suitable for the climate where you live.
And where you live. So, and in terms of the heat, again, maples do reasonably well in the heat. You want to for extremely hot conditions, you want to make sure there's adequate shading in the afternoon for the tree. But most maples enjoy actually having access to a good amount of sun through the day. So you've got your green leaf varieties, you've got red leaf varieties, and you've got variegated. So the green leaf varieties, they cope well with the full sun. The red leaf varieties again enjoy the sun.
Green leaves for sun.
Yeah. And the red varieties, they enjoy the sun and
bit of both.
They would appreciate a little bit of afternoon shade.
Yeah.
Because for the red varieties, if you totally shade a red variety, it'll stay green. It won't turn red. And then the variegated ones, they need a little bit more shade as well. They're a bit more tender.
What about wind?
Yeah, wind's probably the the most difficult part for a maple is coping with extreme exposure to wind. It'll cope with some wind, but prolonged exposure, just it's not happy, and you can see drying out on the tips of the leaves and whatnot. So if you are in an exposed area, try and plan your planting to give your tree some
bit of protection.
Yeah.
And of course, you can use a bamboo fence or some form of boundary where you could cleverly plant a maple to give it that exact care.
Yeah.
Talking of care, aftercare, watering and feeding of maples, you spend money on it, you want it to be an integral part of your Japanese garden space at home, you've got to look after it. Give us your top tips.
Okay, for watering, what they need is they need consistency. So they don't want to be exposed to extremes of overwatering or over drying out. So you want to keep that sort of constant. Now, once a tree's established in your garden, you probably don't need to do anything more with a maple than you would with the rest of your shrubs. They're pretty low maintenance. But you just do want to see, in times of extreme dryness, you want to keep applying some water to make sure that the roots aren't drying out and they're getting the adequate moisture that can go.
Don't put water on the leaves if it's very hot, because it'll burn them, won't it? So.
Not in the middle of the day. So ideally, if you're watering,
I know it's obvious, but some people might do it.
Yeah. The other tip, if you do decide to go with an established garden look, and you do end up purchasing some sort of large specimens from a nursery, check with the nursery as to what the watering regime they had, and try and follow it for a while until you can sync it in with something that you're more suitable.
That's a great tip.
So they don't like you want to keep uniform. That's the key, the consistency.
Okay.
In terms of feeding, they don't require a lot. Again, if the rest of your garden doesn't need so much because you've got good soil, then I wouldn't do anything with a maple. If your soil is poor, I'd really maybe a slow release fertilizer at the beginning of spring before the leaves come out, but probably just check with your local nursery and that
just follow what they do.
Probably the best option.
And I just wanted to point out that within the Japanese Garden Club, there is a lot of information about pH levels in soil, how to achieve an optimum level. I think my soil is 5.5, which I think is pretty much perfect for the climate I live in. But if you have a problem and you want to know about pH of soil, obviously what Patrick said is crucial for maple growth. Within the Japanese Garden Club, you will find lots of information on that, and a few tricks how to increase the acidity of your soil and decrease it as well, because we're like that. So here we are then. We've got our Japanese garden. Maybe we've already started it, but we want some maples in it. You can find a maple, can't you, to fit every purpose in a garden, really. Seasonal, winter colour, tree structure, it's all available, isn't it?
It is, and like I say, there's hundreds of varieties. There's plenty of information on the web. So and I'm sure there's lots of advice you could give as well, Russ, in terms of putting people in touch with other people. And it's just about finding what's out there, what you want to do, and getting access to that information.
Bark, I noticed when we were speaking before this, you sent me a little note, and I just wrote it down, winter colour bark. Could you explain that? Because I think that will interest a lot of people, particularly in more average climates. Yeah,
so there's a couple of varieties, Senkaki, or it's also called Sangakaku, that has lovely coral red bark, and once it's a lovely tree through the year, but once the leaves have gone at the end of autumn, beginning of winter, you've got, for the new growth in the year, you've got this beautiful red coloured bark that sort of just stands out, and you sometimes see photos with snow on the bark, and it's just stunning. It gives you something extra through that sort of the cold hard months. And there's another variety we have which is called Shadava Gold, and that's got a pea green bark, and again,
that's unusual.
That looks
lovely.
Yeah, that looks stunning through the winter months. So it's that's just a couple more options. But like I say, the Senkaki, it's got lovely foliage through the year, but then you've got the added benefit of the winter coloured.
Just have a think, Patrick, before we wrap up our little chat about a couple of do's and a couple of don'ts for maples. I just want to remind you, Patrick's website, Tamata, tamata.co.uk, and because he's a top bloke, he's got a newsletter, and you can sign up for that. And obviously, if you're interested in maples and news about Japanese maples, you're going to get some really good stuff from the newsletter. And also, Patrick is on Pinterest now, Tamata UK. So if you're on Pinterest, make sure you go and find his board and follow it, because you get lots of maple information on there as well. That's a sort of a subtle plug, but it's a thoroughly justified one, Patrick.
Thank you very much.
So a couple of do's to remember for buying and having maples in a Japanese garden, and a couple of don'ts.
I think the main do is to take care of the planting. So make sure that the soil is free draining, and you plant it with a mulch. I think that'll take away a lot of any sort of future problems. If you put the work in and do the planting, that's really the key thing.
Yeah, and don't
let it dry out, and don't overwater it. So it's the consistency, the constancy of the access to water. That just means that you don't put the tree under stress, and I think that's the key don't.
Very finally, let's just err on the negative side. You buy a maple, you do everything, for some reason it isn't taking properly, or you've forgotten to look after it. How much time do you get before you have to say goodbye to the maple, do you reckon? Before it's dead? Or are they savable?
I think it depends on what the issue is with the tree, I guess.
Let's say you forget to water it, and you've had a very dry period where you live, and you've just forgotten to do it, and it's looking saggy and miserable.
I would certainly get back onto a watering regime, get it through, see whether it comes up the next spring, and then that'll tell you quite quickly whether you've saved it or not. Because if it does dry out, it probably will drop its leaves, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's terminal.
Fingers crossed.
So definitely give it a chance to come out again in the spring, and then see where you are.
Patrick, it's been fascinating hearing what you've had to say about Japanese maples. They are very much part of the staple diet of a Japanese garden, and so many people love them, even people who don't like Japanese gardens, and try and incorporate them in their gardens. You've given us some great tips. It's a Dissectum, according to Patrick. You can go a palmatum if you want, like me. Do your research. Check out Patrick's website, tamata.co.uk, tamata.co.uk, and obviously if you're down under, get rid of the .co.uk and put a .nz. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, Patrick, and I know you're a very busy guy, and so on behalf of everyone in the Japanese Garden Club, I want to say thank you for you sharing your expertise with us.
No problem, Russ. I've enjoyed it. It's been good.